all you Outpost fans. So it looks like Rebb will go to any lengths to get what she wants. Can Talon summon a demon army? And who is this healer and what exactly is she up to? We've got a lot to discuss, so don't go anywhere.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
What's up, all of you Outpost fans? Welcome back to the Outpost After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. Tonight, we are breaking down Season 2, Episode 3, Not in My Kingdom. So much happened in this episode. We're going to be talking about Talon and Reb, the deal she makes with Gwyn. Also, Janzo is still trying to woo Talon with the help of Naya. And we're going to be talking about probably the biggest thing to happen on this episode, which was the reveal that, shocker, Garrett is still alive and the introduction of a new character, Sana, who is a healer but is not what she appears to be at all. And we also have a special segment we are introducing today where we will mention our favorite scene stealer of this episode. But before we get into any of that, I kind of just want to give my brief overall thoughts on this episode. I thought this episode was very interesting, guys. As I said, what I thought was the biggest thing to happen this episode was the reveal that Garrett is alive, but also the fact that something bigger is brewing. I think, that was very interesting. Janzo and the little love triangle with Janzo and Talon and Naya. Yes, Naya, because there's definitely a love triangle brewing there too. The show always likes to add in some comedy, and so that was very fun to watch. So overall, this was a very enjoyable episode. Every single little storyline was really fleshed out, which I thought was very great. So guys, I kind of really want to go into talking about Garrett because, as I had mentioned a few times now, this was a really interesting storyline. I was so curious. The character of Sana, she's a healer. She had me flip-flopping all over the place. I didn't know if I should believe her, if I should not believe her. I'm still all over the place. I don't know where to lean on, with this character. Is she, evil and a villain, or is she just kind of trapped, because she's has to be under the rule of the three who we get introduced to this episode as well? I don't know what to think about her, but she's definitely keeping me on my toes. So Garrett is alive, yay! But we find out that he is, of course, kind of in the care of the Prime Order, which is to be expected. I had assumed that he was probably taken as captor for some kind of, purpose to help the Prime Order and the three engage in war on the outpost. I knew he was going to be used for something like that, and I think that's kind of what they are setting up his arc to be. But, we get introduced to Sana, who is basically telling Garrett, oh, you remind me of my husband. So, she's kind of playing this facade of I'm connected to you, I'm drawn to you emotionally, and I've never felt this way before. Which, again, could she be telling the truth? I don't know. She also tells a very interesting story about about how her husband was killed by a Blackblood, which this one I could definitely see being true. Maybe this really is her past. Maybe she really did have a husband and he was sent out to go to kind of get an idea or observe some village that had fallen, and he got killed by a Blackblood who she is describing to basically be Talon. I can see this as being the truth because, as we know, before Talon kind of arrives at the outpost and meets Gwyn and meets Garrett, she is on a quest for revenge. And she kind of seemed, willing to do, she was kind of maybe like Rebb in the very beginning, kind of willing to go to whatever lengths were necessary in order to get justice for her people. So I can really see, maybe Talon getting revenge on this village, and maybe the husband of Sana was just kind of, part of was caught in the crossfire, basically. So I can see that part of her story being true. As far as if she is actually finding herself attracted to Garrett, I don't know. A part of me thinks, maybe there is some kind of connection between her husband and Garrett, that she is actually finding herself drawn to him because there is that connection there. Or maybe she's just using it as a way to gain his trust because, Garrett is really kind of talking to her, like, how can I trust you? Where am I? He doesn't know where he is. He just knows that he's basically wounded and being held prisoner. And there's some woman saying, like, I'm here to help you. You can trust me. If I woke up like that, I wouldn't know what to believe either. But throughout kind of this episode, they start to develop some form of trust. It seems like Garrett is starting to kind of, warm up to her. And, she opens up to him about, I even wanted to try and save you and, trade you and give you back to the queen. And she says, like, oh, but the letter said, I already have a new commander, something along those lines. And first of all, Garrett doesn't believe this Garrett doesn't believe this at all, because that's so not Gwen. If she knew that Garrett was alive, of course she would do whatever she can to try and get him back. Now, two things I thought about this particular scene. Either one, she's lying, Sana's lying, which, this entire introduction of her with Garrett could have been a lie. She could have just been manipulating him. That's still a very huge possibility. Or we know from the end of season 1 that Naya was kind of working with Dredd in order to save her family. So she's basically a double agent. It could also be very possible that maybe Naya intercepted this message and sent that back so that there wouldn't be kind of any connection between getting Garrett back and Gwen. Maybe she wants Gwen to kind of feel, what's the word I'm looking for? She wants her to feel down. She kind of wants her to feel vulnerable and weak, so that way the Prime Order can do what they need to do and Naya will have her family back. That's also a very big possibility. So those were the two thoughts that came into my mind when she had mentioned about possibly trading Garrett and giving him back to, or allowing him to go back to the outpost, rather. And at the very end, we basically see how Garrett is being presented to the three. And the three are kind of interesting looking. They're I don't know, like they would scare me. Like, I could definitely understand why someone in their presence would feel intimidated, because I was looking at them and I was like, oh my gosh, like these kind of creepy. But they do have some kind of like strong type of magical power that was able to heal Garrett. And then it's in that moment that we find out Sana is married to the guy that had been beating him up the entire time, and actually they are experimenting on Garrett. And from what it looks like, at least to me, they're trying to break him down both emotionally and physically enough to the point to maybe kind of turn him into this indestructible warrior that they can use as a weapon against Gwen, or Rosmond as they keep calling her, the false queen they kept calling her. So maybe because the Sana, that she's like a healer and she's like, this is my procedure, we're testing him. So I definitely think they're trying to experiment on Garrett to make him some kind of weapon that they can manipulate and brainwash and use against the queen. But now the three are obviously getting very impatient, because whatever timeline Sana had originally given them, it's not lining up. So now they got 5 days to basically turn Garrett into this warrior, or the Prime Order is going to go along with their plan and initiate war on the outpost and go and kind of just storm everything. So I don't know. Also, I don't know. I thought that was a very interesting concept. Like I said, I knew that Garrett would be used in some way, would be used by the Prime Order in some way. I just thought, they would try and use him for information. I didn't think that they would be trying to conduct experiments on him and use him as a weapon. So that was an interesting twist. I actually didn't think about that. And I guess we will see where Sana lies. A part of me still thinks she could maybe just be lying because she's very intimidated by the three and she feels trapped by them. Or maybe she really is, completely 100% with them and is a liar and is just manipulating Garrett to get what she needs out of this experiment. She could go either way at this point for me, just kind of seeing where she stands. OMG Justin in the chat is saying, I thought Garrett died and the three resurrected him. I thought he was just very badly injured, but at the same time, because he was already so badly injured, I could definitely see that maybe he did die. But But regardless, he is not dead. He was never dead, and he's not dead currently because they, healed him. And then Adam Rodriguez is also back in the chat and says, the three are trying to brainwash Garrett to go against Gwyn and capture Talon. And yes, I have that exact same idea. I think that is definitely what this arc is setting up. So, very interesting arc. I was very engaged in seeing where that one's going, and I'm very curious to see how that will play out in the next couple of episodes and if they will succeed. So we'll stay tuned and see how that pans out. Now, I kind of also want to talk about Talon and Reb and Talon and Reb's whole dynamic this episode. But before I get into that, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has helped AfterBuzz TV be the ESPN of TV talk. Really, we couldn't do it without you. As I had mentioned earlier, the Outpost is fantasy. There's bits of comedy. There's some romance in here. And AfterBuzz TV has all of that. We cover TV shows and genres of romance, of comedy, of fantasy, superheroes, sci-fi, everything that you could possibly imagine. So I am asking you that if you are on YouTube right now, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. So that way, if there's a show that you like, when your after show for that show will be coming on. And if you're on iTunes, give us a 5-star rating because 1 through 4 don't work. They just don't. And leave us a review because we also really like to see your reviews on iTunes. But regardless if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on iTunes, wherever you are, please get involved in the conversation. We have a live chat right now on YouTube. And, I already gave some shout outs to Adam Rodriguez and OMG Justin, who are giving some great fan theories. Please get in our live chat, talk to us, discuss along with us. Comment on YouTube, comment on iTunes, get involved in the discussion. I love to see all of your theories. And it helps me get some better ideas because if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't have as many theories as I would when it comes to the show. So really thank you to everyone who watches and keep us being the ESPN of TV talk. Haha. All right, guys, let's talk about Talon and Reb. So basically, in the beginning of this episode, Talon goes to give Reb the Asterkinge. I feel like I'm never going to get that word right. The little thing inside Talon's head. I can't wait for someone in the cast or the crew or a writer to one day really tell me how you say that because I feel like I'm just not getting it right. And Talon is going to give it to her. I personally thought that Talon was feeling insecure enough in her abilities to, summon the demons and to really help someone like Gwyn and to control this power. I thought she was feeling insecure enough and manipulated enough by Reb to actually give it to her. But of course, the Dragman stops Talon right before it happens because the Dragman is able to see inside minds and basically was able to tell Talon, hey, she is not to be trusted, which I could have told you that, Talon. But at the same time, they're both Blackbloods. Talon has always kind of hoped for another Blackblood to be around. So she's kind of in between a rock and a hard place. She wants to believe her because they are the same, but also miles apart in terms of what their goals are, what their motives are. And so, Reb at this point is kind of thinking, okay, well, there's no way that I'm going to be able to get this from Talon. So she decides to go to Gwyn and try and see if she can manipulate Gwyn and basically offers her hey, Talon doesn't have the ability to raise a demon army, but I do. I don't need the Dragman. I don't need the Book of Names. I can give you this army and I could give it to you as fast as you need because, Gwyn's kind of in this place where she wants to be able to have an army on the ready in case anything happens, but she's really struggling with that currently. So this offer kind of sounds very enticing, but of course, Gwyn is not going to go against Talon. She trusts Talon. She doesn't trust Reb. And in exchange, Reb is basically saying just have Talon give me the Asterkinge. And there were so many kind of propositions going on. Talon was basically also kind of trying to tell Reb, hey, if you help me, I'm not going to give you the Asterkinge, but if you help me, I can promise that I'll get your people out of the portal and, the queen will grant you land to live peacefully. So there were a lot of deals trying to be made in this episode. None of them clearly have been working because no one can trust the person who they were trying to make a deal with. The good thing about Gwyn was that she immediately tells Talon. I like how she didn't keep this a secret because, sometimes in shows we'll see that where someone learns a secret and they'll keep it from the other person and that just creates 10 times more the drama. I like the fact that Gwyn told Talon right away because I think she was able to, kind of solidify that Talon will help her. She kind of has that reassurance of, Talon saying like, yes, I will help you. And it also led to, Gwyn being able to open up even further to Talon and confessing to her that, she's actually really scared about what's going on. And that's to be expected. Gwyn has a lot on her shoulders right now, and everyone keeps telling her, and it's also probably in the back of her head, that the Prime Order could be coming any day. And at this point right now, she isn't ready. She doesn't have a demon army. She's kind of she's kind of refusing Tobin's army just because he's, kind of just like, he's coming at her like, oh, you need me. And Gwyn doesn't want to be like in debt or in need of anybody. He's just not giving her the right kind of, deal. He's not coming across in the right way to her. So she right now doesn't have that army. She doesn't have a demon army. She's very worried about what would happen if the Prime Order just came out of nowhere and started to attack. So she has every right to kind of be afraid, and I'm happy that she was able to, again, be more vulnerable with Talon and kind of grow that friendship. We see that friendship continue to grow episode after episode, and it's really lovely to see, this friendship grow. So let's get into the part that I was like, whoa. I mean, other than, everything that happened with Garrett's storyline, I didn't think that the drag man would be gone so soon. But, Rebb is kind of ruthless and willing to do what's necessary, as I had mentioned, to get what she wants. And if she can't, reason with Talon and get what she wants, she's going to kind of force Talon and give her no choice but to give Rebb the Astrakinj because, she has no way to summon demons now because she killed the dragman and the dragman's gone and she doesn't have any more names. So Talon's kind of in a place of she can't do anything anymore because she doesn't have the right people by her side. So, Rebb is just trying to do whatever she can to get what she wants. And, this is a moment where we see Talon being very vulnerable. As I had mentioned, she came into this series and she had a harder exterior. Now she's kind of becoming more vulnerable, also like Gwyn. And, she's very upset because she feels like the closer she gets to trying to solve this mystery of the portal, more people die, and she doesn't like having that on her shoulders. So we also got to see some more of Talon's vulnerability. And so kind of curious about where this is going to go now, because the dragman left one last name, but Talon brings up a good point. Was it the dragman's last effort to help Talon, or was it Rebb just trying to take her completely off course and continue to manipulate her and trick her? Who knows? That could also go both ways. There's a couple of things that happened this episode where it's like, I could really see it going either way. Now, I kind of want to get into Janzo, Talon, and Naya, because this was the lighter side of the episode, the comedy, the romance. So I 100% think that the writers are setting up a love triangle here. Janzo is clearly infatuated with Talon, and Naya is still under orders from Gwyn to help Janzo woo Talon. And, it was very sweet having Janzo talk about Talon's eyes, and it was also very comical about how, Talon's eyes are like to infinity and beyond gorgeous, and Naya's like, you just have pretty eyes, like whatever. But he was totally catching Naya's attention when she was pretending to be Talon and Janzo had to basically describe how pretty her eyes were. You could tell that Naya is starting to get some type of attraction and feel some kind of emotion toward Janzo. You can definitely tell that that's happening. I think that could really be a thing, at least in the time for the time being, Janzo feels very friend-zoned right now, as we saw when he actually tried to be serious with Talon and she just laughed at him. He's feeling very friend-zoned, so I can totally see him leaning towards Naya a little bit more, them leaning towards each other, and having that be a relationship for a little while. I don't think it will last because clearly Naya is not being truthful, but I can see it happening for a little bit. But, I've enjoyed seeing this bit of comedy and romance come out in the episode, and so I'm very curious to see what will happen next. So that is my review for episode 3 of The Outpost. I just kind of wanted to take this moment to also give some fan shout-outs. As I had mentioned, we have a live chat, so again, I want to give a special shout-out to Adam Rodriguez and OMG Justin. Thank you so much for tuning in and giving and providing me with some awesome theories. Again, I wouldn't be able to come up. It's always nice to get someone else's opinion, and it helps me come up with different theories. It's awesome. And I also want to give some special shout outs to Shiobi Ranger Blue, Stephanie Faye Page, Javier, and Shane Yetta 23. Shane Yetta, I hope that's how I pronounce your name. Thank you so much for tuning in and leaving comments and getting involved in the discussion. Now, I want to introduce, I teased this at the beginning of the show, and we are introducing a new special segment to the Outpost, which is our Scene Stealer. Oh, I jumped the gun a little bit. Our Scene Stealer segment. So this is basically someone who really captured the episode, someone you couldn't look away from, someone who, basically just commanded the attention of the episode. And our first Scene Stealer goes to Sana, because she was such a mystery. And as I had mentioned, I don't know which way to lean with her. I don't know if, she's putting up a front for the 3, or if she's being genuine with Garrett, or if, she's really trying to betray Garrett and she's solidly with the 3. I was very interested in kind of everything that she had to say this episode, so she definitely stole this episode for sure. So there you have it. Sana is our first Scene Stealer. Now, let us go into some predictions for next week's episode.
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
All right, so I want to give another shout out to Stephanie Faye Page, who commented a really interesting theory. Could Rebb's brother Varlick, I guess Varlick was the guy who came through the portal in Talon's flashback of when she was a little kid. Also, thank you, because I didn't know his name was Varlick. Sometimes it's hard to catch names, so thank you for pointing that out. Could Rebb's brother be the birth father of Talon, or did Rebb or Varlick have a direct descendants? If not, where did Talon come from? I have that same question because Rebb has been constantly talking about how Talon is not pure blood, and so I'm very curious of how that's possible. Are we going to learn more about Talon's backstory? Because, if she's not a pure blood, then where exactly does she fall into place with the other Blackbloods? Very curious, so thank you for that theory. I think in terms of Garrett, I think they're going to get very close of trying to brainwash him. I think they could very well succeed. And if they do, I don't know what it's going to take for Garrett to come back. I could probably see Talon, sparking some memory, or maybe even Gwen sparking some memory that will bring the old Garrett back. But I could definitely see them getting very close to completely brainwashing Garrett. Adam Rodriguez in the chat is saying, Rebb will kidnap Gwen so she can force Talon to give her what she wants. I can totally see that happening too. Talon's at a place right now where, she doesn't have much to go off of anymore, and Rebb has definitely put her in a corner, so we'll see what happens with that. As I had mentioned, I think that in the next couple episodes, Janzo and Naya might spark a little bit of romance, and that might go for an episode or 2 before Janzo realizes what Naya is really up to. So that is it. Oh, I just also want to give a shout out real quick to Ivan Soto, who is just joining us now in the chat. Hi, Ivan. And he's asking, are Talon and Garrett a thing? No. I mean, we have definitely been teased a lot last season with Garrett and Talon possibly being a thing. It's, towards the end of the season, Garrett and Gwen kind of solidified their relationship. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe when Garrett returns to the outpost, he'll rekindle his romance with Gwen, or maybe, he'll find himself wanting to, get closer with Talon. We don't know, but there's definitely that love triangle as well. All right, guys, that concludes my review for episode 3 of The Outpost. Thank you again so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Just a little update on my end. Unfortunately, there will be no Outpost After Show next week, but be sure to, follow along on social media. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at it's me, Veronica_V. Be sure to follow along on social so that way you know when we will post an after show for episode 4. It will be sometime the following week, and we will be back for episode 5, which should be very special because who knows, there might be a guest in studio. So stick around for that. Thank you again so much for tuning in, and we will see you at some point for episodes 4 and 5. Bye, guys.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.